Hey, what's up YouTube? Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your rear brake pads on a 2008 Acura MDX. Just going to do the pads this time, not going to mess with the rotors. If you do need to change your rotors, there's just 2 additional bolts you need to take off this caliper bracket, and then these screws right here, and then you can change out the rotor as well. Now the first thing I like to do is push this caliper piston back in, which will make room inside this area for the new thicker pad material. And the easiest way I found to do that is just with a small pry bar or with a screwdriver. This is that Mayhew Dominator pry bar. I really like this, but it's a matter of just putting it in here into this little opening right here in the side of the caliper, and then you can just pry on the outside edge of the pad here, and that will push the caliper piston back in. Before you do that, it's a good idea to double check the master cylinder, make sure that there's enough room so that it doesn't overflow. You could also open this bleeder screw right here and expel the old fluid out this way. That's another way to do it as well. It's not a bad idea to cycle through your brake fluid periodically, and that's one way that some people like to do it, is you just expel the old fluid out this way rather than pushing it backwards through the system. So let's go take a look at the master cylinder, make sure we have enough room to push this back in. Just trying to clean this up a little bit, but you can see that the master cylinder still has a little bit of room in there. If we push the caliper piston back in, this will probably come up close to the top. If you do feel like it's too close, you can take the cap off and suck out some of that old fluid with a turkey baster, or even just roll it up a couple paper towels and try to wick up some of the fluid that way. The fluid probably should be changed. I'll talk to the owner about that, but for right now, I'm just going to cycle it backwards up into the master cylinder and hope we don't overflow that. And we don't need to take the cap off. You can loosen it if you're concerned about the additional resistance, but I haven't noticed any more resistance when pushing the caliper piston back in, whether or not I take that cap off. All right, so now we know we have enough room inside the master cylinder so that we can push this caliper piston back in without making a big mess. And you just try to position it right here, kind of catch the edge of the outside pad there. We'll just pull that towards you. You can see how easily that pushes that caliper piston back in. Now we can loosen and remove these 2 caliper slide pin bolts. Those are 12 millimeter. I'm just gonna break those loose. Spin those off real quick. All right, then we can take the caliper off, and these are nice and light. I'm just gonna set it up here on the rear sway bar, up and out of the way. Just make sure that it's not gonna fall or dangle from the brake line here. All right, then we can pull out the old pads. Same with the inside pad here. You'll notice the inside pad has this little squealer or noisemaker at the bottom. Just need to remember that for the orientation when we put on the new pads. Now we also have replacement hardware. I did the other side as well already, and I noticed that there's one that has a little tab that sticks out, little tab like this right here. This is the little pad retainer clip from the other side, but somebody had put both of the ones with the tab on the passenger side, so I expected that both of these would not have that tab, but I think the one with the tab is supposed to go at the top, so that's what we'll do. That's what I did on the other side. Now I'm just going to use a little wire brush in these channels and try to clean this up as much as possible where those abutment clips are going to go. It's a little bit easier to do, of course, if you take this bracket off, but we're just going to do a quick clean here. All right, now if you can put a little bit of grease or a little coating here, that will help prevent that rust buildup in the future. Just be real careful here, because you do not want to get any of this on the rotor. So we're just going to be as careful as possible and put just a little bit of this. This is just to prevent that from corroding or rusting. I didn't used to put any of this underneath these clips, but it seems like it's helping to prevent that rust buildup. Now we can put the new clips in place. Let's just snap right down like that. And then this one here with the tab, we're going to put that one in the top, like so. And just a little dab of this brake grease right here in the channel where the pad is going to slide. A lot of people don't put any grease in there, and that's fine, but it seems to cut down on some of the vibration and noise. I'm also going to put a little bit at the ends of the pads here too, of the new pads. And remember, this little noisemaker, this goes on the bottom of the inside pad. They don't come installed on the pad, so you need to put that on. And even though this has that nice rubberized shim on the back, I still like to put just a little bit of this brake grease on the back. It just seems to dampen some of the vibration that causes some of the noise. We'll just pop that in. Same with the outside pad here, just a little coating of this brake grease on the ends and a little bit on the back. I know this stuff gets hot and mostly melts off, but there's always a little bit of a residue there that seems to seems to helps keep it quiet. Just make sure you don't get any of this grease on the friction surface of the pad or on the rotor. If you do, just wipe it off. Now we're also going to pull out these slide pins and clean and re-grease them. So just kind of hold the rubber boot here and slide these out. I usually do one at a time. Just wipe that off. I'm going to put it in again just to try to get any more excess grease out of that little recess. If these are really sticky or really bad, you can take off this bracket and clean those out completely. I've got some little brushes now with some brake clean that works pretty well, but in this case it's really not too bad. By the way, this is the grease I'm using. This is the Versachem synthetic caliper grease, and it's a pretty blue color, but let's just go ahead and grease this one up here. That looks about right. We can pop that back in, and when you push it in, make sure that that rubber boot just slides back up onto that shoulder, and you don't want it to push out like this, so when you push it in, squeeze that rubber boot, and that will burp out any excess air that's trapped inside there, but that feels perfect now. Same with the bottom one here. Just kind of hold back on that boot as we pull it out. We'll wipe that off. Put it in again. Just trying to get as much of that junk out of there, but this one really isn't that bad. Give it a nice little coating of the new grease here. And then we'll put this one back in. Same thing, just kind of squeeze that, burp out the air. That looks good. Now before we put our caliper back down, I always like to inspect the boot, make sure it looks okay, clean it if it's really bad, but sometimes I'll just put a little bit of this brake grease on the face of that and on the little edges here that ride on the pad. That just really does seem to keep these quiet. Now you'll notice these pads here have the holes in them for the little V-springs that push apart, but the pads that were on here did not come with them. And so I don't know if this came with that stock. Since it's not there, I'm not gonna put it back on. You guys can correct me in the comments if you find that yours does have these V-springs. Since we didn't have them, I'm not gonna worry about putting them on. It looks like it maybe was an option, but let's go ahead and just put this caliper back on. Now these little slide pins, sometimes you have to turn them to get the little square face to line up with the face on the caliper. Then we can put our slide pin bolts back in, just get those started. And we'll zip those on real quick. See, that's just spinning. You gotta make sure that that goes into the notch right there. Make sure that those little squared faces line up. All right, and then the torque spec that I found online was 25 foot-pounds for this. And you're done. Now just remember, before you drive away, it's important that you step on the brake pedal several times, which is going to push this caliper piston back out, pressing those pads up against the rotor where they need to be. You can see we still have a little bit of space in there. When you're stepping on the pedal though, don't step all the way to the floor. You can damage the seals in your master cylinder by doing that. Just press down about halfway several times until the pedal feels firm, and that way you'll know that that's pushed out all the way. After you do that, go ahead and double check the fluid level in your master cylinder, make sure that that's all set and where it needs to be. I hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. I'll get a link in the description to some of the parts and tools used in the video as well. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck.